Hi everybody, this is John the Other, obviously. As you likely know, the Boy Scouts of America now accepts girls as members. And this change has been received either with celebration and a sense of victory, or with a measure of sadness, depending on the perspective of the person reacting. I will admit, puzzled by the stated desire over a period of a couple of years to break down the definition of the Boy Scouts so that girls could join in and participate in Boy Scout activities. After all, don't Girl Scouts do all the same things like learning to paddle a canoe, navigate with a compass, or find food in the wild? Why clamor to force your way into the Boy Scouts when you already have Girl Scouts where you can learn first aid or program Arduino or make twine from stinging nettles and so on? Why do girls need to force their way into Boy Scouts when they already have Girl Scouts? Or more accurately, why do activist parents want to force Boy Scouts to change when there is Girl Scouts ready-made for girls to do all that fun and interesting stuff? Well, it turns out that Girl Scouts typically do not include the type of activities we think of as normal within Boy Scouts. Girl Scout troops apparently do go camping, but I've been told they don't learn wilderness orienteering or the safe handling of firearms. They typically don't build RC cars or do any of the other things you might expect in Boy Scouts. Girl Scouts, it turns out, learn things like cross-stitching, social butterfly skills, and macrame. Speaking personally, this does not sound like a lot of fun, even though I did teach myself to knit when I was 40. I don't actually like knitting. I was motivated to learn it for sarcastic purposes. But if the Girl Scouts don't typically go camping or fishing or any of the other interesting and fun things that we think of that the Boy Scouts do, why can't the Girl Scouts just begin to do those things? Get modern and start engaging in some traditionally Boy Scout-like activities if there is such a demand among the girls now in Girl Scouts. Well, it turns out that while there are some girls who want to go camping, make pointed sticks, or cook over a fire, this desire is non-typical, and most girls would rather do things like learning macrame or whatever other traditional Girl Scouty kind of things they actually do. And that leaves that smaller number of girls who want to do traditional Boy Scout type activities with not much option, particularly if their families don't go camping as a family activity. So, the Girl Scouts kind of sucks. And it's not likely to stop sucking at any time in the immediate future. And that means I do have some understanding for why girls would want to be allowed into the Boy Scouts, which has traditionally excluded them. And now that girls are allowed to join Boy Scouts, anyone who thinks this might not be a completely super good idea is roundly condemned as a throwback, a caveman, and some kind of girl-hating bigot. Well, let me suggest at this point that this reactionary characterization might not be the most insightful or intelligent point of view to jump on. A long way away from boys and girls learning how to catch fish or to use a compass, the modern workplace has become a sexual minefield. And you might wonder, how does that connect to girls entering the Boy Scouts? Well, thanks to decades of well-financed public propaganda, we now have a generally shared idea that male sexuality is inherently predatory and that female essence is both innately innocent as well as defined by the constant threat of victimhood, particularly from male sexuality. And like a rotten cherry on top of this ugly sundae, we have the modern Me Too movement, which is a set of female-oriented social expectations so toxic that men, the traditional chasers after women, the wooers of women, and the seekers of female approval are now in the Me Too-infected workplace refusing to work with women. Women have made themselves into a hazard to be avoided at great effort in the workplace. The consequence of a whispered Me Too accusation is generally fatal and final for a man's professional career. And in the face of that understanding, there is a counter-narrative emerging from women, which includes proud declarations that the destruction of innocent men is a small and easy price to pay so long as it serves some vaguely defined greater good that advantages women. How brave and noble to sacrifice the lives of other people to advance your own political goals. And how is any of this relevant to the issues of girls now being welcomed as members of the Boy Scouts? Well, just as every woman in a professional workplace is a potential time bomb and an active hazard to innocent men and to their ability to not become unemployable and homeless, your children, if they're male and Boy Scouts, are now to be exposed to a similar hazard. Now, to be clear, young girls suddenly thrilled to be allowed to go on a Boy Scout camping trip or build RC cars during a day clinic, they're not engaging in those activities with some ill intent to ruin some young fellow camper's life. And they're happy to be doing their fishing or locating dry firewood or whatever it is they're doing. And while there are some women who might consciously and maliciously contrive their story in the fielding of a Me Too accusation against whatever man they target, the Me Too phenomenon and the accusations that emerge from it are things generally fomented and carried forward by collective consensus, not generally by singular individuals of conscious and strong character. And now your son, should he be part of a girls-included Boy Scout troop, is a newly ready-to-hand target for this movement as well. Now there is a balance to be found, in which one thing is more important than the other. Some young girls want to do the things that Boy Scouts do, and in many cases they have no place to do them if they're not allowed into that formerly all-male organization. This is a reasonable concern and a reasonable position that deserves to be considered. But on the other hand, the price to be paid to allow girls into the Boy Scouts is that every boy in that organization is now a target for possible accusations which, if they manifest, will ruin his life permanently. It seems like a pretty easy trade to make, so long as you buy into the ideology in which boys are innately evil and must be individually broken or punished for some apocryphal and semi-historical sins of their fathers or grandfathers. Maybe if you're a mother and a feminist, the very early ruination of your son's life when he's 9 or 10, and the burning to the ground of his ability to trust women or trust his adult guardians, well, maybe that will be the valuable and important lesson for him to learn when he goes camping, instead of, learning a sense of self-reliance when it comes to catching and cooking his own meal on a campfire and he's a kid. And I don't think that it's reasonable for parents of boys to expect an 8 or a 9 or a 10-year-old to practice any version of the Mike Pence rule because he's 8 or 9 or 10 years old and he's largely naive of the hazards of an activist movement that takes glee in destroying human beings when they're male and therefore obviously evil. I know I'm going to be called all kinds of monster and misogynist. I'm used to that by now. But I do not think that this is a good trade-off to make. Maybe your male children will never be accused of anything, and there is no chorus of ideological feminists ready to paint your boy as a monster. Maybe you'll be lucky. It's not a gamble that I would make with any kid, whether he was mine or somebody else's. The Lighthouse Project, which I'm a part of, is a very small Canadian non-profit organization which helps the falsely accused to defend themselves both in the courts and in the no due process court of public opinion and social media. We operate based on public donation through PayPal and Patreon. We are horribly understaffed and we are perpetually swamped with cases. And some of those cases are children, even without a gender-inclusive new version of the Boy Scouts to fuel them. But if you'd like to help Lighthouse, there is a donation link in the description of this video. Thanks very much for listening, and as always, have a lovely, lovely day.